This is a document here, or a write-up I put out in the group there about the IMF transition to the digital SDR, the eSDR. This is likely my last video, essentially, because I'm going to be focusing mainly on the group. So if you all want to join, come July 1st, I will not be putting up any more, I guess, free stuff on the Patreon. No, there will be, but it'll be severely reduced because I've had, scammers come through here posing as me on my platform, on my own platform. That's a big disrespect. So I'm focusing on the people who are, want to pay the $10 a month and have skin in the game. I make this extremely affordable. If it's something that you're not able to do, join for free, reach out to people, maybe see if they will help you. I'm not suggesting to pester people at all, but figure something out, be resourceful. It's $10 a month. I understand that $10 a month could be hard, but all right, we all got to figure some things out here. So what we're witnessing right now is the coordinated implementation of a new global monetary system, and it's unfolding live across war zones, liquidity corridors, STRs, allocations, digital payment rails, and legal governance upgrades. What once looked like scattered events through wars, inflation, CBDC pilots, tariffs, escalation, IMF memos, blockchain infrastructures are in fact sequence activation of the programmable reserve regime. We are here. All right.
We making moves. We making major moves. We making moves. We making major moves. We going all in like we got nothing to lose. We making moves. We making major moves.
To understand where we are and where we're going, let me teach you guys and show you where we were and what brought us here to get to there. The legacy system cracks 2008 to 2016. So the 2008 global financial crisis shattered the illusion of a self-regulating dollar-based system. Liquidity froze. The IMF scrambled to issue emergency SDRs. Just to help you guys recall, 2008 was the GFC, the Great Financial Crisis, with the housing seizure and lockup within the US itself, which caused a ripple effect to every other economy. But they were politically gated and technologically limited. The crisis triggered deep revisions in IMF surveillance, capital flow rules, and payment settlement infrastructure. The SDR was revived in principle, but not in practice. Then, in October 2016, the yuan was added to the SDR basket. That moment wasn't necessarily about China's economic size, but rather, don't mind the spelling error, but rather it was symbolic recognition that the world was shifting multipolar. Quietly, this opened the path for eventual digitalization of the SDR basket. The same year, the BIS, IMF, the World Bank began publishing experimental CBDC frameworks. Here we go here. So executive boards completed a 5-year yearly review. Every 5 years, they do a yearly review of the basket of currencies that make up the SDR. Every 5 years. So the board decided that the Chinese renminbi met all criteria for inclusion in the SDR basket, and effective October 1st, 2016, is deemed to be freely usable currency that will be included in the SDR basket as a fifth currency, along with the US dollar, the euro, and the Japanese yen, and digital or British pound. There's the link to it. Again, for the group, man, this is the stuff that I dropped for the group, all right? You guys are missing alpha here. Infrastructure Phase 1, Design and Testing, 2017 to 2019. September 2017, Christine Lagarde publicly suggested a digital SDR might be necessary. This was the green light. IMF's Lagarde says digital currencies could boost its SDR. This was back in September 2017. All right, there's the link for that there. So May 2019, e-currency white paper formally proposed an eSDR, a programmable tokenized version of the IMF's SDR. Fully interoperable with central bank systems, designed for cross-border settlement and enforceable via smart contract rules. There it is right there, May 19th, 2019. This white paper examines the opportunities to reduce costs, increase efficiencies, mitigate counterparty risk, and improve transparency of cross-border payments using e-currency eSDR for financial services providers and central banks. The solution could enable participating financial service providers to issue, transact, and settle with eSDR, a global digital composite asset of stable value, which utilizes the International Monetary Fund special drawing right as the reference currency basket. As a reference point, so the development of the eSDR solution has its genesis in a speech by Christine Lagarde, which I showed you, managing director of the IMF, delivered September 17th, right? At the Bank of England, in which she said the fund will also have to be open to change, to considering a role for the digital version of the SDR. So the issuing, clearing, and settling in eSDR to bring efficiency and transparency gains. So the eSDR exists in the form of digital tokens. It possesses the essential characteristics of banknotes. So after all this, after I tell you guys about the IMF and the eSDR and what it is, I'm going to drop some knowledge on you guys and tell you how this is going to play out, right? I'm going to give you foresight into the future. So, the amount of eSDR in circulation is determined, yeah, whatever, okay, cool. So there's the image about the SDR. So this aligns with Project Ubin in Singapore, Jasper in Canada, and early RippleNet integrations through private and public systems, testing interledger protocols for real-time value transfer. Let me just show you guys that. This was Canada's Project Jasper here. I believe I had gone through this many times before. If my computer starts to work, there we go. Where they're talking about Ripple here for whatever. I don't remember what it was about. So DLT is increasingly being referenced for cross-border payments, where innovators such as Ripple Labs are partnering with global financial institutions to exploit gaps in this service area. I believe they're talking about RippleNet and Interledger within this document as well. It's been a while since I had read it. Let me jump into Project Ubin. So here we are, Deloitte Monetary Authority of Singapore, discussing Project Ubin. Project Ubin SGD on this DLT. All right, if I just do a quick, again, this isn't about Ripple, but we're talking about here Ripple and Stellar. You can see that there on the blockchain. That's whatever. From there, we began to collaborate now. The Bank of Canada and the Monetary Authority of Singapore here. This is the collaboration of both those projects coming together now, enabling cross-border high-value transferring using DLT technology. Project Cedar was done within the US. And this is phase 2, and Project Ubin, you have that right there. So Project Cedar, Ubin, phase 2, improving wholesale cross-border multi-currency payments and settlement. Again, this will likely utilize products within Ripple's purview. So XRP will likely be used, RLUSD within the US dollar. The US dollar is still the most liquid global, currency. And it's the most liquid not because it's used. Right, the world still uses it. Right, there's a de-dollarization, movement happening right now within these giant countries. But truth be told, the world still conducts currency swaps, high-value currency swaps within the U.S. And the U.S. is speeding through their agenda right now to get things accomplished. Let me jump back, okay? That's where that is. Okay, testing Interledger protocol for real-time value transfer between sovereigns. Meanwhile, SWIFT began quietly preparing its ISO 20022 messaging overhaul, enabling rich metadata for programmable payments. So in terms of messaging service, remember, keep in mind, SWIFT is the messaging service. So in new Interoperability Insights paper, top institutions point to blockchain interoperability as critical to asset tokenization. Here we are on Axelar's page here, okay? I'm just going to jump down to where we are talking about it here. So Axelar is built on a hub-and-spoke design that enables swift mitigation of security vulnerabilities and support this might not be the one I'm looking for. Give me 1 second. Here we go. So this is Connecting Digital Islands, SWIFT CBDC Sandbox Project Phase 2, and they're talking about connecting digital islands at this point here. Interoperability, and for interoperability you need several things. Take a look back at 2022's arrangement where we had Stellar as the digital rails and their anchors to the off ramping, if you will, of USDC. That was set up through US and going out to regulated. It's set up through US and going out to Ukraine. So through the Bank of Ukraine, the NBU, as the central bank, and then below that for the retail bank we had Tascom Bank. Tascom Bank was partnered with DIA, and DIA is what provided access or the interface to access with that synthetic CBDC arrangement. And this synthetic CBDC arrangement was the arrangement within US. It's a synthetic arrangement. It's not an actual CBDC. So the bill itself that says no CBDC within the US is talking to retail. The retail synthetic CBDC at this point here is being utilized by Stellar. Let me see if I can pull this up and show you guys what it looks like. So this is what that looks like, okay? We have the OCC and SEC with their oversight. At the top end here for retail, we have USDC retail stablecoin. We have XRP as a bridge asset. See where the arrows are going? We have RLUSD being a bank-issued stablecoin. From the retail side of things up here, you can see that goes through the Stellar network and goes directly to FedNow. Or you can use USDC from a retail perspective right through FedNow as well, depending on who's using it. If we go to, and then you have the Fed line accessing access and messaging at that point. You have the U.S. Treasury disbursements and collateral, and you can see where they're going. The Treasury is going over to the central reserves. The Fed line is also going to reporting central, and down below here, in terms of XRP as a bridge asset, RLUSD as a bank-issued stablecoin, the Fed will likely have the Fed will likely have reserves within Ripple itself. And with the Fed to have reserves, that's called a CBDC-backed stablecoin, or is it a stablecoin? One of those. A CBDC-backed stablecoin, I believe it is. That's what gives that CBDC credibility, because it has a stablecoin that's backed with reserves from the Fed itself. So we have RippleNet Private Ledger here going into FedWire, which comes live July 14th for their real-time gross settlement. So jumping back to the IMF, the catalyst phase was COVID and post-pandemic liquidity shock 2020 to 2022. COVID-19 provided the global crisis necessary to reactivate the SDR allocations. In August 2021, the IMF issued $650 billion in SDRs, the largest in history, but over 60% went to developed nations: Canada, US, Germany, Europe, I guess you could call it that. Igniting debate over SDR governance, allocation fairness, and the need for real-time distribution, precisely what the eSDR token could solve. Simultaneously, global debt soared, central banks hit the lower bound, and digital payments pilots exploded at that point. The Bahamas launched the Sand Dollar, China scaled the ECNY, which went live 2022 at the Olympics. BRICS began coordinating work on bilateral CBDC corridors. Monetary fragmentation, 2022 to 2023, the triggering environment. Man, I have a lot of spelling mistakes, Jesus. Either way, Russia's invasion of Ukraine in early 2022 was a geoeconomic trigger. The West weaponization of the dollar, swift bans, asset seizures, which proved the dollar wasn't neutral. This catalyzed the BRICS coalition to accelerate de-dollarization and settlement independence. In response, China, India, Russia, Brazil, and the Gulf began shifting trade to local currencies, gold, and eventually to programmable instruments. August 2022, Project mBridge came out, successfully settled real value CBDC transaction between China, Thailand, and UAE and Hong Kong. This proved a cross-border, multi-jurisdictional DLT platform could function without the dollar and without SWIFT. 2023 was the quiet convergence. In May 2023, some Asian person there, I'm not going to try and bastardize his name, proposed expanding SDRs to 10 trillion, suggesting that programmable SDRs could be used to support sovereign liquidity and climate-linked bonds. Around the same time, Brazil and China signed a formal agreement to settle bilateral trade in renminbi, skipping the dollar entirely. Entirely. There it is right there, okay? I cite all my sources here, provide all this stuff here for you guys, so you guys can go through this. Right? When you $10 a month, that's all it is. I just want people to show up, provide yourself the wealth. Don't just show up, siphon and harvest all this information and not contribute, be part of the group, contribute, come into the chats, listen to what's going on, learn, ask questions. We're a family within this group, and that's how I operate this group. Each one teach one. Your network is your net worth, right? Or your net worth is your network. And in this group here, we are a solid team. Meanwhile, the IMF was reforming SDR basket calculations, weighting and rounding methodologies, quota structures, and issuing guidance on regulatory upgrades for programmable payments and smart contract compliant liquidity facilities. 2024, eSDR prepares to surface. By 2024, the IMF's budget document and procurement strategies explicitly list the rollout of AI-driven policy enforcement, digital compliance. I burped in here and it smells so bad. Oh my gosh, that's horrible. Anyways, infrastructure and modernization of SDR accounting frameworks. Parallel to this, the IMF's external sector report noted the divergence of creditor and debtor positions, with the U.S. slipping deeper into deficit and creditor nations. Expanding investment positions, an imbalance the original SDR was created to manage. So, except this time, the SDR isn't being updated in theory, it's being rebuilt in code. So by 2025, the wars justify the issuance of the eSDR. Programmability enables control. And again, be mindful, you have to define what the word control means. All these currencies you hold in your hand or within your wallet, they all have serial number already. That's a form of control, right? If you are a cell phone seller, you want to have serial numbers in all your cell phone. You are controlling that. You know where all your cell phones are, who has them, when they've been sold. You're tracking inventory. That's a form of control. Money has control with it as well. So in terms of divergence happening in 2025, war in Ukraine continues, justifying military expenditure and SDR-backed reconstructing financing. Middle East tensions and shipping distributions, spiked inflation and liquidity stress in developing countries, allowing the IMF to blend financial vehicles tied to SDRs. The asset-backed digital currencies, ABDCs, white paper, let me pull that up here. This is what I'm referring to. The asset-backed digital currency is a US dollar successor, a white paper for the Federal Reserve, IMF, and global financial institutions here. Came out March 4th, 2025. That's what I'm referring to. Is released March, proposing a programmable asset-backed reserve currency to be mandated for energy exports and federal settlement, a domestic clone of the eSDR architecture, but under US enforcement itself. The IMF's April 2025 medium-term budget allocates spending for the rollout of AI surveillance, right? Trust infrastructure, and token-ready program delivery mechanisms. In May and June, the IMF continues recycling SDRs through resilience and sustainability trust, using the guise of climate shocks and conflict to inject liquidity, but not through traditional dollars. These funds are increasingly proposed to be distributed via digitally traceable and condition-triggered pathways, the operation logic of eSDR tokens. Okay, let me finish this off then. So right now, what we're witnessing are wars being used to justify liquidity injections via the IMF trust facilities. Tariff shocks, for example, US, China, Trump 2025 measures in terms of the tariffs there. Pushing countries to bilateral digital settlements, real-time FX fragmentation, accelerating the shift to programmable reserve assets. IMF quota reforms talks are still ongoing, preparing a world where the SDR basket includes not just currencies, but digital assets, including potentially ABCDs, right? ABCDs, ABDCs, there we go, Jesus. Or BRICS-backed tokens. SWIFT's ISO 20022 full rollout and FedWire modernization for July, enabling cross-system synchronization between real-time payment settlements and tokenized. 2026 is the flip point at this point here, okay? Everything points to October 2026, the next SDR basket revision. So this year we have the FedWire going live. I believe we're going to start seeing pricing into July's FedWire so the US can be ready as the Treasury continues to buy back its own treasuries and government bonds, and then putting those in a new wrapper of tokenized treasuries, selling that for a quicker flip at that point here. So those short-term treasuries, not long-term treasuries. And where is this money going to go? To the military. Why the military? Because we are in war season right now. And when there's 1 year in war season, the IMF now has a reason to start sending and allocating SDRs or eSDRs through the digital rails that are already running right now, as the heartbeat and pulse of this ledger is already out there and operating. So back in 2015, let me find this. Here we are here, the IMF blog back in 2015. Okay, battling global unemployment too soon to declare victory. 7 years after the onset of the GFC, the global unemployment rate has returned to its pre-crisis level. The jobless rate fell to 5.6 in 2014, essentially the same as back in 2007. The year before the recession. So could we see a similar situation and scenario happening, right? You can see the chart there. The fall is good news, but it's too soon to say mission accomplished. Among members of the OECD, the average jobless rate is still well above the pre-recession level, in sharp contrast to that in non-member countries. So, even as unemployment numbers improved, job creation was slow, structural reforms were weak, and significant labor market slack persisted. Okay, a problem that central banks needed to address with sustained support. So, fast forward to today, these structural vulnerabilities have not disappeared at all. They've been amplified by modern shocks. For instance, pandemics, war, trade fragmentations, inflation spikes. So central banks have tightened policy post-pandemic, after the pandemic, often at the expense of job growth, reinforcing the labor market stress. One of the individuals, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Lungani described, but now with the context of a shifting monetary order. He's a central banker from Ireland, Central Bank of Ireland. So job labor market stress invites liquidity support. So the more stress there is in the market for jobs, the IMF is just sitting there rubbing their palms like, all right, guys, eSDR, you get an eSDR, you get an eSDR, you get an eSDR. Look under your seats, you all get eSDRs. Okay? So digital eSDRs give the IMF central banks a way to inject liquidity in a programmable, traceable manner with conditions tied to employment, investment, and reform metrics. And again, that's neither good nor bad. It's very indifferent. Depends on what the definition is of control. Right? Keep your emotions out. This is a regulated industry. There's no emotions in regulations. It's just you can do this, you can't do that. And there are fine lines between these, and then there are loopholes that haven't yet been played with yet. However, a lot of the old system is being adopted into the new system, so loopholes still exist. So Ukraine and Middle East conflicts are being used as triggers to release these programmable eSDRs. Funds can be dispersed to rebuild infrastructure, stabilize employment, and support social safety nets, all while being monitored and enforced through smart contracts. So, like ISO 20022 messaging, CBDC linkages, and DDR based corridors, digital dollar receipts, that's Canada, ensure that these liquidity injections reach real economies and labor markets directly, not just financial markets. So, October 2026 is that basket revision I was telling you about. We have the great reset January 1st, 2026. July 4th, 2026 is the rebirth moment for the US at that point, just like with George Washington when he established the first US dollar and the first US bank. Here we have Trump establishing the first digital dollar and the first digital bank within US's corridor here. So this revision now in October, just a few months after the rebirth here comes the IMF's basket revision, will formalize digital reserve assets as central bank issuance tools. This gives legal cover to using eSDRs to address precisely the kind of unemployment and underemployment that was flagged a decade ago. So now, what once looked like disconnected policy updates and fintech pilots is actually part of a larger strategy. The creation of a programmable monetary layer tailored to respond automatically to labor market and economic shocks. The money is elastic at this point here. It can grow and shrink in real time through digital programmable rails, okay? So, the IMF's 2015 warning was not just simply about jobs, okay? It highlighted a systemic fragility that very soon required a new kind of liquidity instrument, one that could act fast, smart, and more directly than traditional monetary tools. So what we're seeing, right, is the live rollout of employment responsive global payments and reserve systems that address the labor market fragilities. And this was flagged back in 2015 in an IMF document that I began to show you. So here we are now, 27 minutes. So the IMF and central banks know and knew the labor market was too weak to survive another shock back then. So they began preparing the infrastructure to inject money in a different way, not through interest rates or QE. If you look at what the Fed's doing right now, they're not doing QE any longer. They're just sustained themselves and just leveled. Tariffs are now operating, and treasury buybacks, they're buying back their own, repackaging those and digitally selling those here. So that's what the eSDR is. It's a tokenized programmable version of the IMF's global reserve asset. So here we are now. I was talking about elasticity of money for today now. So in the old world, stimulus was elastic in price, adjusted through interest rates. When interest rates moved up, moved down, depending on where they went, you could see where the price was going to go at this point here. In the new world, liquidity is elastic in purpose and behavior. If you comply, money moves. If not, it doesn't. Let me show you guys something, okay? One of the guys in our group has shown me this here, and this could essentially be a working view of what I'm describing to you looks like.
Nosedive. Nosedive is a satire on acceptance and the image of ourselves we like to portray and project to others. It stars Bryce Dallas Howard, who's fantastic, and she's playing a character called Lacey, who lives her life trying to please everyone.
Lacey is lost. She's lost herself in this world where she thinks that her value is equivalent to her points.
2 stars? 2 stars?
Wasn't a meaningful encounter.
Everyone is a little bit heightened and false because everyone's terrified of being marked down because the consequences of that are unpleasant. So it's basically the world we live in.
So on January 2025, Executive Order 14178, Trump returns to the White House and signs that executive order. It quietly directs the Treasury, Federal Reserve, FDIC, OCC, and other agencies to deliver a unified framework for digital asset regulations. settlement modernization, and tokenized debt issuance within 180 days. And this order is the legal precursor to the Genius and Clarity Act. The Genius Act that just passed. Still has a bit of process to go through still, but we're almost there. The public, outside of you and me following this stuff, hears nothing. Can't talk to anybody outside of the group and X about any of this stuff because they know nothing. They see nothing, they hear nothing, they don't understand any of this stuff at all. So behind the scenes, tokenized treasuries, real-time digital rails, and compliance surveillance architectures begin national onboarding. February to May, infrastructure quietly goes live. So FedNow launched in mid-2023, expanded nationwide by Q1 2025. It's mandatory for all major U.S. commercial banks. Right? JP Morgan, BlackRock, Circle's treasuries, API become interoperable with real-time settlement layers. And these, right? These are the monetary control nodes. Meanwhile, the Fed stress tests include, and hear me out, the Fed stress tests include war, energy shock, and systemic debt default scenarios, mirroring precisely the conditions being seeded in the public narrative, right? That's what your eyes see at this point here. And this confirms the Fed is modeling how it'll manage programmable liquidity under live stress test. June 2025, where we are today, today's the 21st, summer solstice. The system goes visible. June 10th to 13th, Israel launches strikes on Iran and U.S. prepares to enter the conflict. However, the Treasury executes strategic buyback on oil and gold surge at this point here. The Genius Act passed the Senate on the 17th of June. It legally defines stable coins, establishes a Treasury-backed reserve structure, and opens the door to a fully compliant digital dollar. June 18th, the Fed holds the interest rates at the FOMC. It's still at 4.25, I believe it is. 4.25, 4.5, something like that. They didn't hike the rates. This is what I've been telling my group. They're going to stay paused for a particular time, and then they will drop those rates. And once they drop the rates, and as the Treasury continues to sell off those long-term Treasury bonds and rebuy liquid digital gold Treasury bonds at this point and sell those, that money will be used that they get from those digital digital bonds, treasuries, to throw it into the military there, to feed the military complex at this point here. June 24th, 26th. Now I'm looking ahead, okay? Congressional hearings review the Federal Reserve's monetary policy report, court digitization, AI-based fiscal enforcement, the CFPB, Consumer Financial Price Board? I don't know what it is, whatever. Restructuring, all in the same 72-hour window. There are hearings taking place within these days here, and not many people even know. And these are not disconnected. They all finalize the domestic enforcement framework for programmable money, wallet scoring, conditional access, and behavior-linked compliance mechanisms for being hard-coded into legal structures. That day, those days where we had Trump and Elon going back and forth, most people had no idea what was going on. The GLBA Act was being rolled in. It's a 1999 act that didn't get upgraded or updated, just digitized and pushed through. And this is what they didn't want you and I to hear, okay? I'm sure there's other things, but this is one of them. And what it does is the whole opt-out feature when you go to a website and you choose to opt out and reject, and I don't want you tracking my cookies. Federally, you cannot opt out. There is a legal structure and forms and a legal route to go about opting out from the federal eye watching you at that point. July, FOMC, the final monetary signal. The Fed will likely hold rates. I believe they're going to cut rates. They might hold rates. They might cut rates. I'm on the side they're going to cut rates at this point here to inject liquidity, but we'll see. And this could be under the guise of war-based risk at this point here. But the real policy tool is real-time digital collateral routing. So expect Jerome Powell or his successor, because that's on the chopping block, to begin using language like programmable support liquidity, stability tools for compliance rails, or asset class conditionality. Translation, plain English. The Fed's no longer controlling money with interest rates, but rather it's using digital permission, all right? Expect that. August to September, tokenized debt rails or trials begin, Treasury begins issuing long-term tokenized bonds with optional convertibility clause. Judy Shelton, confidence instruments, which is backed by gold, they are not for the public. They're issued to sovereigns, banks, and IMF programs to shore up long-term credibility as interest costs cross $3.3 billion a day. All right. At the same time, FedWire begins migrating to ISO 20022, locking the back end for full programmable compatibility. FedNow, TCH, the clearinghouse, RTP, real-time payments, are now the same function, the same in function with his programmable fiat pipes. I've shown this before. We're on the Swift webpage, the standards release, managing MT and MX releases. We're going to scroll down and we're going to go down to July. There it is, July 19th. Pilot dates, they are going live, all right? October 2025, the IMF SDR basket preview window. At this point, we could see the IMF begin signaling potential expansion of the SDR basket into 2026. They're just signaling at this point here. Why? Because the wars are escalating and they're like, hey guys, we need to get some money over there, there, and there. Why do we need to? Well, because look at them. Look at it. Would you look at that? Would you look at that? Right? Shit's going off in the world and money is going to need to be sent there because they created the perfect scenario and situation for money to be sent out there. These guys are the lenders of last resort, and that's how it's going to go. When central banks begin to fail, who becomes the lender of last resort for central banks? The IMF. So this includes possible admission of the ABDCs, the American Blockchain Digital Dollar, eSDR hybrids, or even the BRICS-linked asset. And this moment pressures the U.S. to affirm the new dollar's credibility before the IMF's October 2026 rebalancing of the basket and their vote. Jumping back, January 1st, 2026, the implementation of Basel III. Full compliance kicks in. Tokenized treasuries become the standard tier 1 liquid asset. For part of the exit strategy within my group, I'm telling them to look at and consider tokenized gold, tokenized silver, tokenized platinum, tokenized metals. The reason you want tokenized metals as part of your portfolio, I mean, yes, it's great to hold physical metals as well. Have that as part of your exit strategy and that you just keep, sit on it, never sell, be a pirate with that. Tokenized though, as gold begins to increase in value, because wars happen, and silver begins to increase in values, because they're using it in technology, because silver's in everything, and there's not enough underground to sustain what's coming, you're going to want to be able to sell these things. Very, very liquid. In a tokenized manner, you can offload that in a matter of seconds, right? That's how you tap into some gains while you're sitting on your pirate gold at this point. Your booty is what they call it. March 2026, Canada's real-time rail global interlock begins. Canada's real-time rail activates, syncs with the FedNow. Stablecoins begin transacting for cross-border between Canada and the US over regulated corridors. They have to disconnect that and fragment everything so they can sign new contracts in the digital world. CBDC projects from India, Brazil, Singapore begin settling on IMF BRICS on a payment versus payment channel, such as the Mbridge project there. I've already shown you guys Project Jasper, Project Ubin Plus, Project Ubin, which is Singapore, Canada, US, cross-border payments. July 4th, 2026, 250th anniversary of the US, commemoration of signing of independence. This is the inflection point. Expect a major Treasury announcement sometime leading up or on this date. The launch of a 50-year digital sovereign bond, optionally gold convertible, issued to sovereigns only via programmable rail. This is the modern Bretton Woods moment, but this time it's programmable. It'll not be sold as the new dollar, if you will. It'll be called a confidence instrument. But it will be the legal and symbolic marker of a full re-engineered monetary system. After July 2026, you can expect war, debt, and total programmability. War with Iran expands. Proxy conflicts with BRICS escalate. The debt will pass 40 trillion. The US dollar is now split. For the public, programmable, identity-linked real-time. For sovereigns, tokenized, optionally redeemable settlement enabled. At this point, the IMF, BIS, Federal Reserve become the algorithmic stewards of programmable liquidity, not through declarations, but through digital rails that make access to capital conditional. So what you're witnessing is a currency replacement. That's what's going on. So you're witnessing the coded enforcement of a new sovereign architecture built on compliance, designed for stability, and wrapped in patriotic rituals. That's what's going on. That's how they appeal to people. If your emotions are leading you, you're not leading your emotions. It's good to have your emotions lead you, but take a step back, rationally think for a second, allow yourself a pause to think about what's going on, and then make your decision. So if you're already positioned across real assets, regulated rails, or programmable nodes, you're not waiting for the flip. Why? Because we're watching this in real time. We're synced in. I'm synced in. My group is synced in. That's where we at. Join the Patreon group because we going dark. We're going undercover. I've taken the link off of what's that called there? X already. This is my last video on YouTube, as I told you guys here. The rest of the videos I make will be within the group. Again, I'm reducing my digital footprint because I don't need to be loud with things. I didn't do this. I didn't start this for numbers. Numbers came and followed me because people saw and recognized and heard quality. So if you want continued quality, $10 a month will get you that. I'm not looking to get wealthy off of nobody. Not a single person am I looking to get wealthy off of. $10 a month will not help me accomplish that. All right. So for everything that you guys do, I hope you have found some value in this one, and I will see ya.
We making moves. We making major moves. We making moves.